Hey guys, Anthony here. I want you to picture this. Your favorite franchise, your favorite book, your favorite video game, your favorite vulgar drawing on a bathroom stall. You're on the phone, scrolling down, you see, finally, they're making a movie and/or TV adaptation of that very franchise. And you've been waiting years for this moment. You're deciding to reread the entire series of books tonight. You decide that you're going to dress up as a character cosplaying for the premiere. You decide to cancel your wedding that you booked on a slave plantation just so you have that date open for that night. And then you scroll down just a little bit further and you see three little words. Starring Pedro Pascal. If you were like a good chunk of the internet, upon hearing that little detail, your eyes just rolled so far back into your head that you could actually see your brain's electrical impulses forming the word ugh. Why? Because we see an awful lot of Pedro Pascal. He's in everything. He's like the high fructose corn syrup of actors, making something we already shouldn't be consuming even worse, leaving us all to wonder how it even got here in the first place. That's of course hyperbole for comedic effect, but it does come from the sentiment that Pedro Pascal is overexposed to us. Most people would agree that it's the Disney Plus series The Mandalorian that elevated Pedro Pascal to his current status of fame. On that show, he plays the titular character, the Mandalorian, who, according to the lore, will not remove his helmet. Pedro, somewhat understandably, complained about this as he wanted the audience to see his face, and ever since then it seems like the audience has had to endure seeing him everywhere, to the point of being sick of that face. But where does this feeling come from? Is he really in that many things? When you're in a Costco, stabbing a middle-aged basement dweller over Pokemon cards in front of his 3 kids, are you opening up the package and going, "Oh crap, another Pedro Pascal card again"? Not exactly. But on a personal level, I am afflicted by what has been known as Pedro Pascal fatigue. Symptoms of Pedro Pascal fatigue include nausea, indigestion, a vague sense that somebody else could be doing a better job in this role, and feelings of being so done with this shit. Maybe you're a fellow sufferer of Pedro Pascal fatigue. Well, sitting on your ass and giving a 1-star review to Gladiator 2 isn't gonna cure your affliction. For that, we must ask ourselves, where did the Pedro Pascal fatigue virus come from? Did the Mandalorians create it in a secret science lab? Or was somebody just hungry for an entree of vampire bat cordon bleu? Well, like other viruses, there are variations of the disease, ones that have mutated from already existing pathogens. Way back before Pedro Pascal was ever on the scene, back in the late aughts, there was another actor that I recall. One who was in absolutely everything, it seemed. It was the first actor that I could identify from American culture where we all formed a consensus that he was just in way too much shit. That actor? Seth Rogen. Full disclosure, I don't really consider myself a Seth Rogen fan, which is weird because Superman is actually one of my favorite movies of all time, and he wrote that. But usually, when I see him on screen, I'm like, eh. One day he just popped into the Hollywood ether like an unexpected burp after a second bottle of root beer, and he's been smelling up the place ever since. Prior to 2007, he had some notable roles in The 40-Year-Old Virgin and Freaks and Geeks, but it was really his starring role in Knocked Up that thrust him into the public eye. And boy did he stay there. Between the 5-year span of 2005 and 2011, Seth Rogen was an on-screen part of no less than 22 projects. And that's a conservative figure. And he's been quite consistent in them. He plays the lovable schlub, if you stretch the word lovable to apply to a surprise colonoscopy. Seth Rogen fatigue has died down since those years, perhaps since the idea of seeing an actor that the audience is sick of has become quite common, but he's actually now just as prevalent as he ever was, with the virus spreading from on-screen to behind the scenes. He's producing a lot. He's sticking his dick in other people's work, things like The Boys, and Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Things that we love that we don't want to see violated. But sadly, they are. But when talking about his screen presence, his most egregious thing is when he's heard but not seen. Mantis from Kung Fu Panda sounds like Bob from Monsters vs. Aliens, who sounds like Donkey Kong, who sounds like Santa Claus. He even sullied two separate beloved warthogs by giving the same voice to both Bebop and Pumbaa, which I guess I shouldn't complain about, because if Seth Rogen does have a role in Hollywood that's appropriate for him specifically, it should be to exclusively voice warthogs. Back in those days, Seth Rogen was mostly the only actor that made people feel this way. Cut to the modern day, and you have several celebrities following in his footsteps. Now, as I said in my previous video about Revenge of the Sith, when I was a kid, before I became a full-on nerd in my teenage years, I was obsessed with two things. The first of those things was Garfield. I had Garfield posters and folders, and during that whole everybody is special bullcrap that they do at that age, when it was my week to be special, the thing that everybody knew about me was that I loved Garfield. The character that eventually took Garfield's place in my heart and stayed there was Super Mario. So imagine how I felt when I heard that both these characters were getting movies and were both going to be played by Chris Pratt and not me. He became a leading man when Marvel was the biggest entertainment franchise on the planet at the time, and he got the part of Star-Lord. When he was cast, I was like, ugh, because I knew him as Andy as the goofball from Parks and Rec. And some friends of mine defended the casting choice, and I stood by that he wasn't a good pick. And after a few back and forths on the internet, one of them said, "What's your problem with Chris Pratt?" Which, I didn't have a problem. I just didn't see him as someone who could helm a project. Then Guardians of the Galaxy came out, and he did alright, so I took back what I said. Then I became a defender of him when the media dubbed him the worst Chris, and he had a cluster of detractors because he said a few things which really weren't that big of a deal, and he was also a proponent of going to church, which, whether you do or don't, I don't care, you do you. It all felt very, we're out to get him, which I try not to be in favor of. But then they started making him the lead in projects he had no business being the lead in, and now I've kind of hopped back over the fence. The dude's not Super Mario. That's a beloved character, and beloved characters have voices that can't be changed. You wouldn't watch a movie where SpongeBob sounded like Brad Pitt. Mostly because Brad Pitt is for looking at and ogling, but also because we know that that's not right. And I've heard these bullshit arguments like, Charles Martinet can only really do the voice in short bursts, he can't do it for a whole movie. Yeah, that's based on nothing, and in fact, I remember when I pre-ordered Super Mario Galaxy, GameStop was working with him, and Mario left me like a 2-minute message on my phone telling me my game was ready. So, that's a load of crap. Then there's the even bigger bullshit argument of, yeah, I just can't sit through a whole movie with him sounding like that. Now, I hate when people try to tie everything to bigotry, but aside from the fact that that sounds a little xenophobic, it's also not true. If you can sit through a whole movie of Borat, you can sit through one starring what's arguably the most popular fictional character of today. So we don't need Chris Pratt shoving an old man aside using his regular voice. Please. I shouldn't hear a sound clip of someone talking about lasagna and then wonder if it was said by an Italian plumber or a fat orange cat. So this Mario cash grab movie had Chris Pratt, Seth Rogen, and yet a third actor that we're all getting sick of, Jack Black. Now, for most of his career, Jack Black was well liked. He was doing his thing and we were, for the most part, okay with it. Just do your chubby loudmouth shtick, those of us in the mood for that will stick around, anybody not into that will stay home, everybody's fine. Then for a while it seemed like he aged out, like maybe Hollywood thought he was too old to be acting as immature as he was, because I noticed an absence of him. It seemed like he wasn't getting parts anymore, which was too bad because I loved him in the movie Bernie. Cut to today, where there's almost no comedies being released to theaters, but when they need somebody to be funny, they put an electric guitar in the middle of a pentagram and light it on fire to summon Jack Black. To his credit, he's just about the same level of funny he's always been, but like Chris Pratt, he's been put into roles of established characters as basically himself. Bowser has never played piano before, but because Jack Black has a musical background, guess what? You're staying at the recital until everyone's kid is finished. And when he took the role of Minecraft Steve, it was built around Jack Black's comedic persona and not the character from the best-selling video game. The rest of the movie was animated in a style that respected the source material, but for some reason the hero, which I would think you'd want to make animated in this merchandise-heavy era, didn't get the same treatment. Suck it, Jack Black. I just ended you faster than you ended Tenacious D. Also, maybe it's just me because I've never actually played Minecraft, but am I the only one who just assumed Steve was supposed to be black? Like, if you had told me the Minecraft movie was going to be live action, I would have just assumed that the guy they got to play him was none other than another actor we see over and over, Kevin Hart. Is your movie studio making a comedy? Flip a coin. If it's heads, Kevin Hart is starring in it. Despite the fact that Will Ferrell and Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson are two completely different people, whenever I see the box art for either Get Hard or Central Intelligence, I feel like it's going to be the exact same movie. And speaking of The Rock, yep, him too. Like a mountain town that needs a highway put in, let us build a project around The Rock. If you're a struggling actor, you must hate seeing The Rock in everything. You work your ass off studying Meisner and Cell Adler and all that stuff, and instead of giving a movie role to you, they give a part to a guy that just decided to try acting after he was done wrestling. Beyond that, some people don't like him because of some external stuff, like a rumor that he often engages in diva behavior. Oh, when you're flying my personal gym to me, don't forget my morning latte from this obscure coffee shop in Seattle. 2 sugars and roids. Pour in lots of roids. At least he's not annoying, unlike Awkwafina. When Awkwafina screams, it sounds like a cat choking on an entire hot dog. Seriously, there was a time where if you were watching Comedy Central for a few hours, you had to do it on mute because every commercial break, they'd play a promo for a show and hit you with that sound. Awkwafina feels so forced on us. Like, she's their go-to to make Asian people feel represented. But Hollywood, have you heard? There's like 1 billion of them. And that's just the Chinese. You can get another Asian American actor. One that you don't have to contractually allow to start rapping when she's playing a seagull. Awkwafina is the kind of embodiment of something we keep seeing in the film industry that makes us assume movies suck now, which is the actors that are hired don't adapt to the movie. Rather, the movie just tries to build itself around the actors. Her having her own sitcom is an example of this that I particularly hate because she's not a comedian. I know so many talented people in comedy that never got their big break. Why did Comedy Central give a show to a rapper? I asked that question once online, and some random guy chimes in, "Nobody owes you anything," which I never said anything about me, so thanks, douche, for being a dick to a stranger for no reason. Look, I've never heard Awkwafina rap before, but the perspective I'm coming at it from is, I imagine she worked very hard on her rap career to get to where she is, and I really doubt she would like it if somebody else came along who's never rapped before and said, "Hey, instead of giving her a record deal, give one to me. Because I don't sound like Donald Duck was sent to prison and realized he dropped the soap." Come on, that's what she sounds like. You know it's true, don't you? Giancarlo Esposito. They're even forcing him to play Gus Fring in video games now. I'm glad the guy's getting work because he went through some tough times before that role, but we can have an intimidating bad guy besides Gustavo Fring. I watched all the episodes of Community recently, and he's in about 2 episodes, and it felt so nice seeing him play somebody different, and I could actually enjoy a very talented actor instead of dreading him. But then, something like The Boys comes along, and needs an evil mastermind to run an empire, so it's Gus Fring again. Hollywood does the same thing by making Jeffrey Dean Morgan play the same character he played from his hit TV show. They made a movie about the 8-bit video game Rampage, and had him play Negan there too, even down to his little Negan foot stamp. And they brought him onto The Boys too, so the same show copied both Gus Fring and Negan, and somehow, in the one episode that they were in together, none of the deaths were because either character decided to bash someone's head in. And finally, Dan Levy. This one's more of a personal choice, I just see him popping up a lot. Love his dad, and he seems cool too, still feels a little too frequent. I hear good things about Schitt's Creek, haven't seen it, but I do plan to watch. But I think the hype that was surrounding the show makes me wary of it. Like, is it good or is it just progressive? Because there are things that are progressive that are good, but progressive doesn't automatically equal good. And certain people, like bloggers and critics, don't seem to understand that. That can lead to overhype, which will likely lead to disappointment, which then leads to not liking a guy who didn't do anything wrong. I don't know, what do you think? Am I being fair to Dan Levy? As you may have noticed, most of these actors that we're harping on are pretty one-note. But that can't be the totality of this phenomenon. There are actors who play the same character over and over again that we're not sick of. You don't hear the same resentment towards Jason Statham, Vince Vaughn, or John Cena. Morgan Freeman's played the same magical Negro for decades now, and not only are we not sick of it, but we just look for more and more mundane things for him to keep narrating. Oh, that's great you reminisce about your summers in Alabama, Mr. Freeman. Talk about penguins now. Gal Gadot appears about as frequently as her Wonder Woman co-star Pedro Pascal, playing herself in every movie, and while she does have some haters because of things like trying to use the power of song to end a global pandemic, or her radical stance on not wanting to see the country she lives in bombed, she's not really despised as a screen presence. And looking at her, I just can't figure out why. Why aren't we tired of seeing Gal Gadot? It boggles the mind. On the flip side, there are also actors that people are sick of seeing, but not for reasons of overexposure. The public's been out of love with Will Smith for a few years now, ever since he tried to force a Chris Rock mic drop preemptively. And I don't think we need to get into Amber Heard, or any of the beds that she slept in. But it doesn't even really need to be that serious. There's a pretty strong attitude of dislike towards Amy Schumer. She briefly appeared in a YouTube video where the cast of The Karate Kid was being interviewed, and there were multiple comments on that video from people saying they were enjoying it until Amy popped up. Personally, I don't get what all the fuss is about. That video was a reunion for the cast of The Karate Kid, and Amy was in the movie. She can clearly be seen on this shirt that says "Makin' Bacon." Okay, maybe that one was too mean, don't get out your pitchforks. Not trying to pour salt in the wound there, although salted ham does sound delicious. I'm just trying to state a fact that she's disliked by a lot of people. But anyway, in the case of Amy Schumer, even the people who don't like her, it's not because she's in everything. We're not sick of her. So it would seem that this actor fatigue we feel, it's not a matter of distaste or lack of range. It's simply overexposure. But is it that simple? And is it even true? As I mentioned before, it took about 22 films for us to get sick of Seth Rogen. But when we look at Pedro Pascal's output during a similar time span, it's actually a little bit lower than him. So I guess it would seem that 16 films are all it takes to get the public to be sick of you. Or it's within the 16 to 22 film range. But I don't know, should we go by that? Honestly, I think maybe just more than 2 films a year sounds kind of much for most actors. But then again, these guys are on a quote-unquote hot streak. Can we even really assign a number to it? I thought we should maybe look at these actors that I've mentioned, these actors that we've gone stale, I guess you would say, in our hearts, and compare them to other actors and their outputs over a similar 6-year time span. How do these actors stack up against, say, somebody that we're not sick of, like, say, Margot Robbie, for example? Margot Robbie, or Margot Robbie if French is considered too ethnic for you, had 18 acting gigs over the span of 6 years, 2 more than Pedro Pascal, and we're not sick of her. Plus, in a contest of who we'd rather kiss on the mouth, I think we know who the winner would be. Pedro, of course. The similarly beautiful Gal Gadot was in about a dozen movies over the course of that time, and she also remains well liked. Well, for the most part. Again, some people don't like her for weird reasons, but she is mostly liked, even if some people would say that she has enough bad takes to fill the Nile. Oh, look, another Michael Jordan who's been putting up numbers. Anne Hathaway managed to get 18 under her belt. I don't have a joke for her, but I would like to say I think she has a very pretty smile. Ooh, that's impressive. Anybody gonna top that? Or is Bryan Cranston gonna be the one going up to the others and saying, I'm the ambition. I'm the one who works. You can't do that many movies in that short amount of time. They're all gonna laugh at you. Hey, I just starred in a drama where I played somebody with mental disabilities. Quick, somebody give me an Oscar. Wow, a whopping 16 movies. The same number as Pedro Pascal, come to think about it. And yet, for her, it doesn't seem like she's in everything. Everywhere. All at once. Holy shit, dude. Slow down. Take a rest. You've earned it. After all the work you've done, I really hope your bosses just give you a pat on the shoulder and say, good man. I can't think of anybody who has a bigger output than John Goodman, nor can I think of anybody who hates him. So that seems to indicate that it's really not the amount of stuff that you're in, not the amount of projects. Possibly it's something else. We all love to use data to prove our point, but we should acknowledge that when the human element is involved, sometimes data doesn't make that much sense. So how do we figure this thing out? Well, I think what we need to do is go back in history, to a time when the movie star was hallowed above all us lowly plebs, a time when acid-wash jeans were in style, and they still let you be a movie star, even if you weren't that hot. Let's take a gander at the career of one Mr. Tom Hanks. In America, Tom Hanks is a national treasure. Since the 80s, he's had an illustrious career taking a wide array of starring roles. Right before the pandemic started, I went to indulge my inner gross pig at a Kentucky Fried Chicken to try this donut chicken sandwich they had. It was a piece of fried chicken with 2 glazed donuts as the bread, like it sounds. And so I was with some friends, and naturally we were talking about the pandemic because it was in the news, it was just starting. And one of my friends goes, oh, Tom Hanks has the disease. And I thought he was just joking around. And in response, I said, how do you know he has the virus? Was he walking around with his hat and scarf from Philadelphia? Yeah, it turns out my friend was not just joking about Tom Hanks having the disease, and I felt like a huge piece of shit. Yeah, partly because it was a disease, like at the time, something we saw as if you got the sickness, it meant instant death. That was the hype around it. But also because it was Tom Hanks. Like, why couldn't it have been Andy Dick? Out of all our actors, it would be difficult to find someone more beloved than Tom Hanks is. When thinking about it, I recall a meme from years back featuring actors that nobody hates, where Tom Hanks was featured prominently. Now, we do have to address the elephant in the room that meme is from years ago, and Tom Hanks actually does have a nice chunk of haters out there now. This is because of a political thing where somebody accused him of some absolutely disgusting stuff, and those people care a little too much about politics, so they believed it, even though this was from a faceless, anonymous person. I think all this hate is a little weird because there's no evidence. No evidence at all that he did that, but it did emerge. Now, is it possible that Tom is this evil monster behind closed doors? Sure, but again, no evidence, and you wouldn't like somebody to just automatically believe something like that about you, so maybe don't do it to somebody else. At least there's no evidence that I've seen. I have heard people bring this up somewhat regularly, but they never mention anything credible beyond the rumor. They don't mention any evidence. So who knows, maybe there is evidence out there, But since I'm not somebody who spends his time Googling how long it takes for Oscar Mayer bologna to expire while you're living inside a bomb shelter, I haven't seen any. Ignoring this incident, before all that, everybody loved Tom Hanks. He's always had an everyman quality to him that made him relatable to audiences, and on top of that, he had a certain charisma. So that's one element as to why we accepted him the way we did. Another is his talent. I really think the fact that he's not the same in every movie has gone a long way toward his likability. Sure, one could say he's close to what we'll call standard Hanks in movies such as Castaway or The Burbs, but you can't deny the guy has range. He's played executives, tribe leaders, lovable losers, romantic leads, and even inanimate objects like toys, just not the kind that mommy likes. This helps make his roles memorable and distinct. Unlike actors with no range, nobody confuses a quote from Forrest Gump with one from Captain Phillips. He's like drama or comedy. Doesn't matter, he's got something for everyone. Tom Hanks, of course, isn't the only actor with this quality, but he is part of a dying breed. He's one of the few actors that was allowed to be a chameleon like this. You know, when you think about it, most actors rarely engage in transformations and mostly stick to certain characters that are offshoots of themselves. And this is regardless of talent level. Picture Susan Sarandon. A great actress, but I bet when you pictured her, your mind went to a character like the one she played in Rocky Horror or Thelma and Louise, one that really didn't require her to stretch. And that's how Hollywood likes it. They really don't want their stars to be Daniel Day-Lewis, who doesn't show any of his personality to the public, and for every film wraps himself in a cocoon only to emerge as a majestic thespian drawn to shiny objects, mostly named Oscar. How thorough is Daniel Day-Lewis when preparing for a role? Daniel Day-Lewis immerses himself in a role so deeply that I've been Daniel Day-Lewis this whole time. Why do Hollywood studios rarely give actors the chance to show off their range? I don't know. I would assume it has something to do with marketing, something like that. People just like getting the thing that they ordered. Even if you love pizza and you come to my place for a steak, if I give you a pizza, you're going to be upset that you didn't get a steak. Likewise, if you see Jackie Chan's name on the bill, and he spends the whole movie singing instead of doing a bunch of Jackie Chan shit, you're gonna be a little bit disappointed. Come on, Leonard Skinner, we all came here to hear Freebird. For whatever reason, Tom Hanks was one of the only ones that was allowed to break the rule. And now the problem is only getting worse. Before it seemed like Hollywood simply preferred that their actors not show range. Now it seems like they actively discourage it. Just about every new actor they introduce to us on screen gives off the impression that they're only there to play themselves. And I think that's one of the reasons that audiences don't show up for the movies anymore. Because we can feel that. It all feels very low effort. I think people of my generation and younger are to blame for this. A lot of us have the attitude of, everybody should tell their story, and that's bullshit. What about Martin Shkreli, the farmer bro who increased the price for AIDS medicine by 5,000%? Should he be allowed to tell his story? I guess he shouldn't be prohibited, but I'm not going to support Hollywood funding it. To be clear, I'm not saying people should be prevented from sharing their stories. We need a truly diverse array of stories because without that, things would get boring. What I'm saying is that the way we've gone about it is ruining the industry. Because instead of finding actors with star power who could work their way into our hearts, Hollywood just grabbed anybody off the street and was like, there, you happy? And these people they grabbed are people who feel like they're entitled to praise. And so they never have to become a new character because they're perfect the way they are. You came here to see them because they're so perfect. And since Hollywood only adapts things that already exist, they take this new crop of actors and build a movie around them rather than become the characters we've already loved for years. And actors who have been in the game see what's going on, and they want the same deal. Build a project around them. They're a star. Why are you giving a newbie the deal and not me? Gimme, gimme, gimme. Give me the money without the extra work. Tom Hanks has rarely ever been like that, and makes the effort to fit the project, and that's why he's beloved. Pedro Pascal comes off like another one of these newbies who has projects adapt to him rather than the other way around, and that's why he isn't. But is he really like that? Because my Pedro Pascal fatigue has been flaring up again, and I was thinking about it and I realized something. I've never actually seen anything Pedro Pascal has been in. The Mandalorian, again, that's a Disney Star Wars product, and I refuse to watch Disney Star Wars because I never want to see Darth Vader sodomized by Mickey Mouse with a lightsaber. I haven't seen The Last of Us, I never saw him snort cocaine in Narcos, and the Fantastic Four isn't even out yet. The only thing I've actually watched with him in it was the second Wonder Woman movie, and he was fine. Not great, but certainly not terrible. With Reed Richards, there appears to be no effort to make him look like Mr. Fantastic, so that pisses me off. Maybe that's feeding my dislike, whatever you want to call it, of him. But on the other side, me being a Nintendo fanboy means I haven't played The Last of Us. But it does seem like he resembles Joel physically. So there's that. He should have that credit. So why is it that I don't like seeing the guy? It has nothing to do with politics, at least not for me. I know some people don't like him because he said something a while back, and even though I hate when people on both sides try to preach to me, I couldn't tell you what he said. I genuinely don't remember what it was. And I think that's true for most of his detractors. The fatigue is mostly a bipartisan thing. At least that's what I wanted to say. But then, the other week, Pedro Pascal said something political again, which of course pissed some people off, so they're starting to dislike him for that again. And also around that time, his character went absent from The Last of Us, causing people to actually miss him. So, thanks a lot for fucking up my video, Pedro Pascal. Go back to France, you dingo. So I haven't really seen a lot of Pedro's performances, but I still see a lot of Pedro. There's so many clips and interviews that bombard my feed. All the movie YouTubers that keep talking about him, all the trailers that imply he's going to bore you yet again. That's why actor fatigue is becoming common now and not back when they were shoving Elvis into musicals about lands we annexed like 8 years prior. Because technology is shoving them in our faces against our will. Oh dear God, please don't let this become an actual thing. Again, this doesn't apply to Tom Hanks, who came up when this wasn't an issue. Outside of his films, you really only got a taste of him on late-night talk shows during his promotional duties. It felt like he had a good balance between being a public figure and having a private life. With just about every actor we're sick of, overexposure isn't the only ingredient, but it is the key ingredient. Pedro Pascal is seen over and over again not doing anything particularly impressive. Awkwafina is forced into projects, and remember when I said I was being conservative with the amount of projects Seth Rogen was in? Well, that number didn't include the multitude of institutional comedy shows that Seth managed to infiltrate during this very same time period. Imagine seeing someone star in a comedy movie so successful that practically all comedies are forced to imitate this style if they ever want to be financed. But you don't like that style. You find it to be immature, uninspired, and vulgar as a way to overcompensate for the lack of cleverness. Well, that's okay. You can always go back to those comedy TV shows that helped you get through those tough times you had. Like when the head cheerleader told you she was going to kiss you, but instead pulled down your pants in front of her whole squad. Except you can't do that because the knucklehead who ushered in this style of comedy pops up there too, bumbling around, gathering up the moss of praise you get just by being there, blissfully unaware at their own mediocrity, as evidenced by their own somehow reflexive laugh. God, is there anything more annoying than that laugh? And basically the same thing is happening with Pedro Pascal. When Saturday Night Live had its 50th anniversary show, they brought him on to do some stuff, and it was just like, why? Why him over everybody else over the 50-year history of that show? A guy who hosted just once, it didn't make any sense. It felt very Flavor of Now, as opposed to just celebrating the totality of all that show was. Even before the technology was there to make a celebrity a recurring presence in our lives, there were some like Seth Rogen who kept showing up. But of course, like many new things to the modern world, smartphones did help usher this in. It kind of almost doesn't seem fair. If your dream is to become a huge movie star and be loved across the world like, say, Robin Williams or Betty White was, the public could end up disliking you for reasons that aren't even really your fault. Journalists and content creators could flood the market with you, and then you're kind of screwed. Even if you don't agree with my assertion that this new crop of actors is just low effort, we can probably all acknowledge that star power just isn't what it used to be. Celebrities just aren't adored as much. And judging from online discourse, some people even outright hate celebrities now. I, for one, hate Emma Watson for starring in the Beauty and the Beast remake and making out with a hairy beast that wasn't me. Their place within the hearts of younger generations seems to have been taken by web personalities who these kids view as authentic. Which sucks for the actors because one of the only ways to combat the oversaturation of a celebrity, seeing them everywhere, is if their star just shines so bright, but now that star power has been attenuated. It's with that star power that enables us to love Tom Hanks. His performances have helped us see things within humanity we might not have otherwise seen, things both good and bad, and critically, these things have resonated with us. We've seen him put on the shoes of Forrest Gump and love Jenny with all his heart despite only getting the love of a quarter of her heart back. We've seen him as a grown man dance on a toy piano because the childhood enthusiasm we've long abandoned is still inside him. We've seen him enter the unknown of outer space and get startled by fear by telling Houston, "We have a problem." Maybe this isn't true anymore because I'm no longer a teenager, but you used to be able to go up to somebody and say, "Someone's poisoned the water hole," and your face would light up and so would theirs, because you knew what that was. You knew where it was from and the spirit of it. Modern Hollywood doesn't do that. They create formulaic films that might make them profits for now, but eventually the money's going to dry up. The problem's bad enough to where it's affecting movies that should have that feeling. I'm probably going to say this regularly over the course of this channel, but Everything Everywhere All at Once is a candidate for the greatest movie I've ever seen. But did it stay with us? Can you reference it like you can Willy Wonka, Taxi Driver, Rocky Horror? Are we quoting the lines? Has the film become part of pop culture and become embedded in who we are? The times we're living in have put up barriers between us and the medium of film. Tom Hanks and many actors of old Hollywood were able to give us those moments. They helped create the nostalgia for a previous world that's used to combat the woes of an increasingly crappy one. If you're a new actor in Hollywood, you can be overexposed. You can even be one note, but you need to give us that little seed that will become nostalgia. Create moments that not only speak to who we are, but shape who we are as lovers of entertainment and human beings of modern times. Or you could not do that and pass by like a fart in the wind. That's someone named Pedro. I've said my piece, but what do you guys think? Are there any actors that you dread seeing? And what do you think the Vegas betting odds are that once they release that Zelda movie that we all know will be god-awful, that Ganondorf will be played by none other than Pedro Pascal, with Zelda being played by Rachel Zegler and Link being played by Kristen Stewart, and I don't know, I guess throw in Cynthia Erivo in there as, I guess, Urbosa. We should get this guy to do the movie. He's very entertaining, right? Anyway, just leave your thoughtful and respectful comment down below, and I'll see you in the next one. Alright, have a great night. Bye.